All right, 97.7 Outlaw Radio FM listeners, we are live in full effect with the legendary, the one, the only half pint of no self-control right here on Outlaw Radio. How you doing this evening?
I'm doing well, thank you, and shout out to all the hip-hop guys and goddesses. Salute my brothers and sisters.
I gotta say, first and foremost, you were such a talented individual and legendary at that, so just thank you so much in advance for giving us a little bit of your time this evening.
Anytime.
But I gotta ask you, taking you right back to the beginning of your career, what actually inspired and sparked the legendary career of Half Pint?
I was always hip hop because that's what we grew up on. That was our outlet. I live in Long Island, which is 45 minutes from the Bronx, from where it all started. But Long Island has its own, its own swag and its own way of telling stories. And hip hop, global hip hop, has had an impact from worldwide. But as I was growing up, I found my voice through hip hop, and it was a great experience to be able to have that outlet. I started out in the group. I was in college playing basketball, and I was approached by Hank Shockley of the Bomb Squad, who had already made a name for himself as through Public Enemy, and Public Enemy in itself was a machine. That whole Spectrum and 510 family was a machine already that was moving. And they asked me would I join, and I was like, all right, So it just blossomed into that. But I've always been in love with hip hop. I've always been inspired by the women of hip hop: Sha Rock, Pebbly Pooh, Wanda D, the Mercedes Ladies, MC Light, Queen Latifah. I've always been inspired by them. Roxanne Shante and MC Glamorous, been giving me the opportunity and showing me that I can express myself through this format and have a voice. So, it's just been a natural progression.
And I gotta say as well, it's not every day you're just shooting some hoops and such a prestigious individual walks up to you and asks you what you're doing. So I gotta say, people that are listening, start playing more basketball. You never know what's gonna happen.
Yeah, right? Because who would have thought that was happening? I'm just at the park with my friends. We always play ball. Every summer we get together because we play during the season at our various schools, and I happen to be playing the basketball, talking trash, and here comes this guy out of nowhere and says, "You sound like you can make records." I'm like, "Yeah, And the next thing I know, I'm in Green Street Studio cutting the first single, Change the Style, and the rest is history.
And I have to ask you as well, because as we already know, you're a member of Son of Bazerk's backing group, No Self-Control, and the band. I was wondering, how did that come to be for you? And of course, how did you actually come connected with the other members?
Well, the fellas were already established as the Townhouse 3, Jawel, Almighty Jawel, Pep Daddy Roar, and Son of Bazerk. They were already known as the Townhouse 3 in Long Island, making the rounds. And they were down with Spectrum, which became the Bomb Squad, which produced Public Enemy. So that was already an entity that existed. That family, that connection, that already existed. I knew the guys because they were frequent at my house. I just happened to be younger, So I would always see them, Flav and all, and that was just a constant for me. But to come into the group itself when it became Son of Bazerk, I don't know if you've heard the story, and Busta may have told it a lot of times, and from leaders of the new school as well as YBT about the names that were on the board that they put up on at 510, and they was a challenge to see who would earn those names, and that's kind of what happened. But they were already kind of together, and like I said, when I was at the park and Hank Shockley came up to me, his mindset was, I need this person for this particular aspect of this group because it has an organic feel. And so once he had to come to my house to ask my grandparents because I was underage, and once they asked me what I wanted to do, I said, okay, I'll try it, And once I realized what this really was and what I was getting into, it was just, like I said, an organic feel of what was happening. Because again, hip hop from Long Island's perspective had its own little swag. You already familiar with Public Enemy. You had Eric B. You had EPMD, De La Soul, Leaders of the New School, YBT, Seriously Fine, JVC Force, Kings of Pressure, True Mathematics, you had Sugar Bear, you had MC Glamour, you had all of these entities that had a voice that told the story from the perspective of being in Long Island, and which everybody seems to think that because it's a suburb, that it's, that it's all, grass and sunshine, but we had our own issues to deal with and our own way of expressing ourselves, and it came throughout hip-hop. So that was, my blessing, because it got me through college as well as to where I am today. So,
And also, as well, when you actually brought up Public Enemy a few moments ago, one of the instrumentalists, band players of No Self Control was actually Terminator X of Public Enemy. I was wondering, what was it like working with a world-renowned DJ like Terminator X?
Well, like I said, working with all of them and any of them and being on tour with them and just dealing with them on a daily basis, that is natural because, again, Long Island in itself is small and close-knit, but so is the hip-hop community in Long Island. So everybody knew everybody. Everybody respected everyone. Those that were in the game long, they dropped those jewels. So, again, that was family. That's part of the 510 family with Shamello, Durant, Kerwin, Slick Mix, Paul Shabazz, Public Enemies, Bomb Squad, Spectrum, Terminator, PE, that whole thing, that was a machine that they set up almost like Motown, where they groomed the artists who were already talented, but they put them in a position to where they had a platform that was larger than just the community where we lived at. So that in itself was a wonderful experience, and again, a blessing, because to know them all outside of hip hop or outside of the music business, it was just natural for me. And then to now be involved in that situation was, again, it was a blessing.
And one thing I have to ask, because when you said you went on tour with Public Enemy and whatnot, everyone has memorable tour stories, whether they're good or whether they're bad. You know what I mean? What was one of your most memorable moments as being on tour with Public Enemy? Because it must have been really huge. Because back in those days, Public Enemy is still big. Don't get me wrong, but back then they were huge, especially within hip hop.
Yeah, we were doing arenas with them. The one tour that we went on with them, that was, I think it was an extravaganza. It was a hip hop of all stars. It was with Public Enemy headlining. You had Jazzy Justin, the Fresh Prince, Kid and Play, Ice-T, Ghetto Boys, MC Light, Queen Latifah, Naughty by Nature, Leaders of the New School, Tribe Called Quest, our group, MC Breed. It was a beautiful thing because everybody respected everybody. It wasn't about any egos. You left them at the door. Such as a way of, making sure that everybody feels comfortable and that they know that there's family. So we spent from Thanksgiving to New Year's together. And again, when we performed, even though we were an opening act, other acts that were headliners, they were watching us, and then we go out afterwards and relax and hang out. Moving forward, in the 2010, Chuck put together the Hip Hop Gods Tour with Poor Righteous Teachers and Wise Intelligence, X-Clan, Moni Love, Awesome Dre, Johnny Juice, and it was in itself a beautiful experience, and it was reminiscent of being on that tour in '91. Because again, it's about camaraderie, it's about fellowship, it's about family, and even sitting with Schoolie D and listening to him drop jewels about the business and what his experiences were during when he was coming out. All of that in itself is priceless, and it was a great opportunity for me to coexist with people who didn't have egos but loved hip hop and loved fellowship and that true essence of what hip hop was, and that's what it all means to me: fellowship, honor, respect, integrity, and brotherhood and sisterhood.
And also, in 1991, the track "What Could Be a Better Bitch" was actually featured on Tupac's Juice movie soundtrack. I was wondering, how does it feel to have one of the songs that you were in, it starred in such an iconic film?
It was surreal because at that time, again, I was in college. At the same time, I was playing ball for the school I went to, basketball for the school I went to, and at the same time, here I am traveling, across the country making music. We were in the movie. If you don't blink, you'll get to see me during the DJ contest. But being a part of that iconic album and compilation was great because this was the first time that a soundtrack based on a hip-hop urban movie had gone gold at that time. Now we know that, Above the Rim and all the other movies have gone on to do great things, but this was like that intro to that. And I gotta say, it was an experience to be on the same album as Naughty by Nature with Uptown Anthem. You can't beat that. That's more than just an Uptown anthem. That is a hip-hop anthem. And they were reaching their peak at that time. So just to, be in cahoots with them or connected to them, that was a wonderful thing. Even being a part of that scene in the movie where, you see Omar Epps and you see them in action, you see Khalil Costain and all that. That was a beautiful thing, and I gotta say, looking back, it's surreal when you're going through it, but when you look back, you're like, yo, I really was a part of something, I don't know what the impact was. I wasn't aware of it. I don't even know if I'm really sure of the impact that it had back then from my perspective, what my contribution was, but it was definitely a journey that I'll never forget and definitely a blessing.
And I gotta ask you as well, because I know you mentioned you had such a short part in the movie. Did you have the opportunity to meet the late great Tupac Amaru Shakur?
No, unfortunately, I think when we were shooting, it was after that scene was done in the building, at the club, the building in the city, and he was actually downstairs while we were upstairs. I met Jermaine Hopkins, Khalil Kane, who I now also know from label mates on True Groove All Stars, and reconnecting with him was a great experience, and Omar Epps. But I didn't get a chance to meet with Tupac, and that's something that I probably wish I had, because I can only imagine the conversation and what kind of conversation that we could build on.
And I gotta say, you might not have had the opportunity to meet him, but a lot of people, would have just dreamed to just be able to be in the same building as Tupac, you know what I mean? But you still have that memory of being in that movie, and the same movie that starred one of the best hip-hop artists of all time, in my personal opinion.
Absolutely. It definitely was a blessing to be connected to that project. Absolutely.
And also, in the same year of 91, Son of Bazerk actually released the debut album titled Bazerk, Bazerk, Bazerk that actually featured the song What Could Be a Better Bitch. But I gotta ask you, what was it like being in the studio, just doing that debut album? Because I gotta say, that's probably one of the, in my personal opinion, one of the most iconic East Coast albums of all time.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Like I said, for the most part, a lot of the material was completed prior to me joining the group. If you listen to the album, there are some songs that I'm not on, and those were songs that were actually kind of done before I had gotten there. My first introduction in the studio to being recorded was Change the Style, and then we went on to do Band Get Swivy Part 1, and those experiences, and Rebel 1, one time for the Rebel. Those experiences actually helped cultivate my love for being in the studio, because I love to perform, but being in the studio was a different entity, and just watching it all come together, especially with being in the studio with the Bomb Squad, because they are so meticulous in what they do, and the genius of watching them work is invaluable. Especially watching, Keith Shockley and how he really, his genius and his vision come to fruition. And being on that project in itself was a beautiful experience. And, you get a taste of me rhyming on N41, where I was able to kind of, just kind of display some skills so that you see that there was more to me than just being the first female hype chick.
And also, as well, jumping ahead in the timeline here, in 2014, you actually collaborated with the Impossibles on the track Free Spit. I was wondering, how did yourself and the Impossibles actually get connected? And, of course, what was it like working with them on that project?
Well, the Impossibles are dope. They are one of the first virtual hip-hop groups, because not everybody's in the same area. C-Doc, one of the founders, he actually is the videographer and a Public Enemy when it comes to videos, and he produced their latest album about the grid. But he also is a producer of film and movies. So his vision in itself of what he was trying to do with Impossible and then connect the dots with us and Son of Bazerk, I think was a great opportunity for us to really collaborate and connect. And I have to say, I met him unbeknownst to myself. Before we even got to the music piece, I was posting some old music from the unreleased album that we had on YouTube, and he had responded. And he said, "Oh, this is great music." I was like, "Yeah, it's me." He was like, "Wait, hold up. Are you half?" I was like, "Yes." He was like, "And I'm see that," and it was just a beautiful exchange in a meeting of the minds and watching and hearing him talk about what he saw us being able to do, but also seeing his vision come to fruition between the movies, the videos, and the connection with Public Enemy. And he's a great dude. And shout out to the rest of the Impossibles because they are the bomb. I love them.
Because I gotta ask this, because I know you're still quite active within hip hop even today. So I was wondering, do you think down the line, Half Pint and the Impossibles might team up again for another collaboration?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Absolutely. C-Doc did a movie based on a book by Stella called Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, and he asked me to do a song for the movie on the soundtrack. And I was like, you don't even have to ask. Just say, listen, Pike, rock on this. This is what I want you to do on this track. And it was a great privilege because not only was I on that soundtrack, which was a great movie, but I also got to exchange and meet the author of the book, who is very visionary when it comes to writing urban fiction, and I love it, and I love how C-Doc was able to transform that book into the movie as well as onto the soundtrack. And I gotta say, shout out to Johnny Juice for producing Well Thought Out, which came out in 2010, which was our latest release as a group, and he really embodied what the Bomb Squad and what Son of Bazerk feature No Self-Control is about, and I have to shout him out because he is a genius when it comes to what he does. Well-rounded, level-headed, and definitely an inspiration when it comes to me being in the booth. So I have to shout him out as well.
And also, in 2019, I have to say, this is very, very much, I gotta say, you most definitely deserve this award. If not, you deserved it even sooner. But you actually received the Los Angeles Society Award. I was wondering, can you tell us a bit more about that? And of course, what was it like just being recognized by that society?
Well, Los Angeles Society is actually an organization that was started by one of my former students, Sadia Colbert at Limehouse, and actually she had started this organization years before to empower young people and as well as support those young people who were misplaced or homeless. So her organization is steeped in community activism, and it felt good to know that I had some kind of impact on her to go and do these kind of public works to support people and to support those that have less than others. And to know that she remembered me and she felt an impact that with my work in the classroom, I was honored to know that she gave me that shout out and gave me that award. So I was definitely humbled by it. When I watch my students and I look at what they've accomplished after being written off by so many people, they thank me. But for me, I'm just giving them the opportunity and cultivating the seeds that have already been planted but have been buried because they've been stomped on. But they flourish, they grow, they embody what it means to be community activists, life learners, and supporting those that are like-minded and wanting to empower each other. So I'm so proud of her, and I'm humbled by the award, but I'm also proud of all my students because they get it and they understand the importance of each one teach one, get yours, go back and reach one. And I use hip-hop to connect with them and to bridge those gaps that may be, created based on, the differences between age and social and economic disparity. But when we look at the whole thing, like I tell them, I teach them, we are reflections of each other. So when you win, I win. So it didn't take the award for me to feel honored and privileged to know that she was my student and that she was doing great works, but it definitely humbled me and made me feel proud to know that she acknowledged what I was able to do and bring to the table. And that goes for all my students.
And I gotta say as well, that is most definitely deserving, because you've done so much within music and even outside of music. You're a very kind individual, and I gotta say, I'm glad that somebody recognized you just for your achievements and accomplishments, and actually, you most definitely deserve that award.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And I gotta say, there are a lot of people out there who have really been receptive to, our group, to my work, as well as supportive and just understanding that we are a community that can only get better if we stand together.
And also as well, on October 30th, 2020, you actually dropped the video for your amazing track, Real Hip Hop. I was wondering, what's the story behind that song? And of course, where can our listeners actually buy or stream themselves a copy of that single today?
Well, we have, Son of Bazerk, year before last, we actually collaborated with True Groove All Stars and True Groove Records with Tomas Barker, Marla Mace, and Touchy Feely. And the collaboration with True Groove All Star creating Skin in the Game was such a great experience that they wanted to extend our work in our collaboration. So during the shutdown of the pandemic, Tomas, who is the CEO of True Groove Records, he came to me and said, "Listen, I want you to be on one of these songs." And I was like, "Great!" So we did. I collaborated with him on him reestablishing his song called "Blood and Concrete," which came out, I want to say March of last year, May of last year. "Blood and Concrete," and then I also did a collaboration with Marla Mace called "The Truth Comes Down," which came out the following 2 months later. And then I was, we were talking. I was like, "Listen, I want to make. I think I'm ready to kind of, step out on faith and do something solo." So, Touchy Feely, who's another executive of True Groove, but he's a great producer. He sent me a track, and I'm listening to it, and I had some already things. I started writing to it, but it just didn't feel organic. So the more I listened to it, I'm like, "No, hold up, I gotta do something different." And it just kind of came out. This was just a natural progression of where I was mentally and emotionally, and how much I wanted to salute the pioneers of hip hop who don't really get the accolades because they, we're so far removed from the history of hip hop. So I wanted to just drop some jewels without being preachy, but also, empower the young people to understand that hip hop did not start with, Eminem. It didn't start with Tupac. Not taking anything away from them, but there's a long legacy that they stand on the shoulders of people who have been in this game, and when there was no money, when there was no accolades, they were putting in work. And I wanted to also express that hip-hop is more than just rapping. It is elements of a culture that exists because it comes, because we were disenfranchised and we were looking for our voice. We were looking to be noticed and to be heard. So out of the concrete grew this rose called hip-hop. Out of this desolation came this beautiful culture that these young people had created while they were standing on the shoulders of those from the Civil Rights Movement, the Liberation Movement, the Black Panther Party, and all these movements that come before, and they were able to articulate their needs and their ideas and their feelings through music, through art, through dance, through DJ, and all of these elements are connected to the African diaspora, so that this way people understand that we are a great people and that we have something to say. And, I wanted to express that in some form and show some homage to them by creating that song, as well as, again, connecting the youth to that so they understand that there's a history that comes behind this. Aside from all the exploitation, there is a real value in what we do and what's taking place. And it doesn't have a monetary value on it. It's an integrity thing. It's a love thing. And that's what we have to remember in order to preserve the culture itself. So people like you who do these shows give us the opportunity to spread that knowledge, to to others who may not know, because all they see is what they hear on TV. So they get to get a little bit of that history. So I appreciate you, as well as others who are, bumping this song out there and letting letting me share that message. And you can find it on SoundCloud. It's called Real Hip Hop by Half Pint. It's on SoundCloud, YouTube. I think it's on Spotify. It's on all your major platforms under True Groove Records.
And also, as well, I noticed that you were actually a co-host over at Hip Hop for Justice. I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about that platform, and of course, where can our listeners actually tap in and hear Half Pint as a co-host?
Well, Hip Hop for Justice was a coalition that emerged and that was birthed from the Mario Woods, Justice for Mario Woods movement. A brother, Mario Woods, had succumbed to damn near assassination, a firing squad in California by the police. He was a mentally ill brother who was, really, what we see now, the exploitation that takes place. We see that a lot of the things that are taking place with young brothers and sisters that are dying in the streets, some of them have mental illnesses. And this was a brother who was shot right before the Super Bowl 50 in San Francisco. So it was a situation that once this brother was killed, it was swept under the rug, where they didn't want to really make a big fuss about it because they were bringing in all of these people and all this money that was coming in for the Super Bowl. But the Nation of Islam, as well as the community at large, they galvanized, they made sure that they were holding these people accountable for what had happened, and they made sure that they got the message out. And out of that birthed the Hip Hop for Justice. And it started off as a call-in show where you had artists that were talking about how to bridge the gap between, elders and the youth, and how we need to, galvanize and reactivate the community to take care of each other and look after each other in the midst of all this brutality that was taking place. It emerged into the Hip Hop for Justice panel discussion, roundtable, and podcast just as organically as it started. And then it became now a web show. And you can go to YouTube. You can subscribe on the YouTube channel, Hip Hop for Justice, for the shows, and it's also on SoundCloud on the previous recordings that we've had done. We continue to do great works. Year before last, I had a panel discussion on the global impact of hip hop in Long Island regarding the impact of Long Island hip hop globally, and we talked about that, and we started to begin looking at how we need to discuss as a community, reactivating the community to support the young people and bridge those gaps between the elders and the youth. So that was a great catapult to connect to the other show that I produced, which is called the Classroom Hip Hop 101, that you can find on YouTube as well, and subscribe to that, where I produced a show of this educator who's known as the nation's hip hop principal, and he talks about how to educate young people of color in the midst of the supremacy that takes place in a system that is based on racism, because there was a time when we were not allowed to be educated. And now that we are, there's some systems that need to be broken down so that we can make sure that there's equity across the board. And all three of those entities, between Hip Hop for Justice, the Classroom Hip Hop 101 with Dr. Blizzy, my works as a solo artist, as well as the work that I do in the classroom as an educator, those things all come together in empowering young people at large, specifically, our young people of color, to make sure they understand what their roles are and how to unify as a unit, as a country, as a society, to demand equity across the board and support of our young people. When you know better, you do better.
And I gotta ask, what is next for Half Pint? Like, is there anything I missed during this interview? Any new music? Anything else you would like to still talk about or promote while we still have you here live on the Canadian airwaves?
Well, first of all, I want to thank the country, Canada. Thank you, Canada. Salute to you all. I appreciate the love. I appreciate you digging and checking for me. We still have this song, Real Hip Hop, that we're pushing. Again, Blood and Concrete with True Groove All Stars and Half Pint. You have Skin in the Game by True Groove All Stars and Son of Bazerk featuring No Self Control. And you also have Truth Comes Down by Marla Mace featuring Half Pint. So all those songs are out. We're pushing them, as well as I'm hoping to, complete at least a solo project, a whole project in which I get to, again, not be preachy, but drop some jewels in a sophisticated manner in which, it's return of the boom bap, where we get back to the elements of hip hop in its original format. I love what's being done now with young people being creative and thinking outside the box and being able to find their voice. And I want to be able to make sure that those young people are understanding that they stand on the shoulders of others and they must leap off to protect and preserve the culture in itself. I'll continue to work in the classroom as a teacher and an administrator in the evening, empowering young people, so that's not going to stop. We're looking for Hip Hop for Justice to continue to do more great things, more shows from the Classroom Hip Hop 101. And again, you're going to hear some more solo stuff from me. And I want to shout out all the producers that have empowered me, have worked with me, have shown me love, all the DJs that have shown me love. Salute to all the hip-hop gods and goddesses and the pioneers. I want to shout out Solo Flex for making the connect between you and I, because that is a good brother. He's always on the other side of the United States. So, for him to make that connection from me to you, I think that was a great opportunity and a selfless opportunity for him to do for us. And I appreciate him. I want to shout out to Johnny Juice, Keith Shockley, the Bronx Squad, Public Enemy, my group, Son of Bazerk, featuring No Self-Control, all of the sisters that are in hip-hop, because they continue to inspire me, and they continue to create paths in which we can get our voice heard and respect must be shown.
And also, before we wrap things up, this is the time in the interview that I give a chance for the individual that slides into the radio station airwaves, just a chance to drop your social media handles. That way, if our listeners want to know more or to stay updated on everything Half Pint, they can do that if they're not already doing so.
Absolutely. On Instagram and Twitter, I'm Half Pint, NSC, so you'll be able to see that. On Facebook, you can see my Half Pint fan page, but also you can find me under Cassandra Jackson on Facebook. And again, make sure that you subscribe to the Classroom Hip Hop 101 with Dr. Blizzy. Subscribe to Hip Hop for Justice. Make sure that you also subscribe to True Groove Records and All Stars on YouTube, and check out those new videos that keep coming, and those bangers we're gonna keep putting out. As long as you are loving it, we're gonna continue to put them out. And I want to thank you for all the love and support that you guys have shown me over the years, because of you, I can continue to do what I do and do what I love. I want to shout out all of those groups and people that I've come in contact with, because although some I may not see on a regular basis, but they've always been able to show me love. Shout out to them, to all those groups, to all those individuals. And that's in the music business in hip-hop, as well as outside of hip-hop. I got a chance to meet a lot of my sheroes and heroes, and, what could be better?
Hey, most definitely it's true. I feel the same way, you get to speak to amazing individuals like yourself every night, so it's actually a pretty extraordinary ordeal.
But I definitely appreciate you being able to have me on the show, and I want to shout you out, too, and thank you. But I also want to let you know that I'm proud of you, because you're building a format that is very intricate in this culture that needs to be heard, not just in the United States, but also abroad. So I thank you for what you do as well. Salute to you.
Hey, I gotta say thank you so much. My goal is to create a top-notch radio station. Just that way, I can show love back to the culture that I love so dearly 24/7. Play some of the best music, and most definitely interview some of the best individuals just like yourself.
But it's definitely appreciated, and know that it does not go unnoticed. And when you're authentic, you definitely get that salute. So I salute you.
Thank you so much, and I gotta say I salute you as well. But I gotta say, Half Pint, thank you so much for just coming on 97.7 Outlaw Radio FM. It was an absolute honor to have you on my radio station. I hope down the line we can make this happen again. But for now, most definitely stay safe and be blessed, and I'm looking forward to talking with you again soon.
Absolutely, and I heard that you did a virtual interview with somebody. So the next time we got to see each other face to face.
Hey, most definitely sounds great. I'm slowly trying to I'm slowly trying to get into those things, but it's hard because it's so hard to broadcast those into the radio station's airwaves as well, right? So it's kind of limited just being on social media. But once I find a way to broadcast it into the radio station airwaves as well, then I'm most definitely going to dive into the videos.
But listen, anytime that you want me to come on, I will be honored. So I thank you, and I love Canada. And hopefully I'll get out there soon and be able to push and do some work and do some shows and be able to meet some people and meet you as well and make sure that we make that connect, that New York-Canada connect.
Hey, most definitely. That sounds like an absolute plan. Thank you so much, Half Pint, and most definitely have yourself a wonderful night.
Thank you, my brother. Salute to the hip-hop gods and goddesses. Good night.